Welcome to this edition of the Housing Ombudsman Service podcast. I'm Victoria King, one of the sector learning and development leads here at the Housing Ombudsman Service. As we continue to develop our resources around learning from complaints, today I'm joined by Tadana, who's a dispute resolution manager, and Trish, who's a business engagement and service improvement manager from Abri, and they're going to be talking more about root cause analysis with us today. As we go through the podcast, we are going to be talking about root cause analysis. Often it's shortened to RCA. So from this point onwards, we're going to be calling root cause analysis RCA. So before we go into the questions, Tadana, Trish, could you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about Abri? What type of landlord are you and how many homes do you own and sort of where are they located in the country?
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. Thanks for having us. So my name's Chisenga. I'm the dispute resolution manager at Abri, and I oversee our relationship with the housing ombudsman and other ombudsmans that might contact Abri in relation to complaints from our residents. So Abri exists to provide the very best homes and services that we can today, whilst pursuing the ideals that make tomorrow better. We're a large housing provider spanning from London to Devon down to Oxford and to the South Coast, and we own and manage more than 58,000 homes and community assets and serve more than 113,000 customers. We believe everyone has the right to a good quality, safe, warm and sustainable home in a community where they can belong, grow and thrive. And our new corporate strategy aims to make this a reality by giving us the confidence and ability to address today's realities while striving for tomorrow's ideals. And I'll hand over to Trish to introduce herself.
Thanks, Tadana, and great to meet you, Victoria, and hello to everyone on the podcast. I'm Trish, and I lead the business engagement and service improvement team. And within my team, I lead the root cause analysts and the service improvement coordinators. I've actually worked in social housing for around 17 years now, and I've been lucky enough to spend the last 4 years in this role at Abri.
Thank you both very much, and thank you for joining us today. So let's get into what we're talking about today, root cause analysis, RCA. So we're very big here on the Housing Ombudsman Service about learning from complaints. So how do you guys at Abri identify learning from complaints as a housing association?
So when a customer raises a complaint, it's logged on our system and a theme and team is logged against the complaint. And that's based on the initial report that comes in from the customer. So Abri centralized complaints team will investigate the complaint and ensure that they put things right for the customer. But also as part of that complaint handling, the complaint officer will identify learnings from the complaint following their investigation. These learnings are often improvements that can be readily implemented or feedback on colleague behaviour. And that could be things like internal communication to teams on maybe application of a policy or procedure or giving feedback to one of our contractors as lessons learned. When it comes to closing the complaint officer will update the theme and team on the system, and if required, to reflect the root cause of the complaint. And also send out a customer satisfaction survey following the closure of a complaint to get real-time feedback from our customers. And that feedback is reviewed by our head of complaints to identify any service improvement opportunities.
So there might be some landlords listening to this podcast who are new to root cause analysis, RCA, or are struggling with it. Could you talk us through what RCA means at Abri, how you use it, and some of the benefits?
Of course. At Abri, root cause analysis isn't just a process or a set of tools. It's really a way of seeing the entire organisation through the customer's eyes. So across the sector, lessons learned can often focus on one isolated issue or a single service failure. And whilst that can be really helpful, it only gives you part of the picture. And we've fallen into that trap ourselves in the past, really trying to understand what went wrong in that specific moment. But for us, the lens is much wider when it comes to root cause analysis. We have really focused on how services connect, where handovers work or don't, and how communication and information flow between functions, and what residents actually experience at those key moments that matter in their journey with us. So our approach is really holistic and cross-functional. And instead of asking what went wrong, we ask ourselves, why did this happen? What allowed it to happen? And how do we stop it from happening again? And the solutions we develop are aimed at fixing those systemic drivers, not just patching the system, although there are usually plenty of quick wins along the way too. And the benefits of that are huge. You see fewer repeat complaints, more consistent services, and stronger regulatory compliance. But the biggest benefit is the human one. When you fix the underlying drivers rather than just the visible symptom, residents really feel the difference, and their experience becomes smoother and more predictable. And importantly, one quick fix doesn't create a new issue somewhere else. And thinking about our internal teams, the process feels supportive. It's designed to understand, not to blame, and people genuinely get excited about being involved because they're helping unpick the real challenges they face in their everyday and getting to shape those solutions that make both their work and the residents' experience better.
Thank you very much, Trish. That's great. So at Abri, you've got a root cause analysis team. How did it come about that you should have a dedicated team for a root cause analysis?
So as part of embedding a positive complaint handling culture and a culture of continuous improvement, we recognise that learning from complaints is a really big part of this process. So our centralised complaints team, they work really hard to resolve our residents' complaints, and we recognise the need for a dedicated team who could take a step back from the day-to-day operational delivery just to understand what makes our residents unhappy. So important to note that we have been on a journey to get where we are today. So in 2021, we established a dedicated root cause analysis team and defined our approach to learning from complaints through structured problem solving. And then in 2022, we then focused on our data quality, making sure that the data we were working from was accurate and consistent to allow us to mature our approach to active and reactive problem solving. And then moving into 2023, that's when we introduced our forecasting. We started using a defined approach and quality data to anticipate issues before they became a problem for our residents. And then in 2024, we reflected further, recognizing our improved skills in RCA and our ability to identify the true root cause through investigations, which uncover the underlying cause of the issue, not just the symptoms.
When it comes to RCA, you almost have to be a critical friend within your organisation and work with internal teams to uncover issues that perhaps you've not previously thought about or thought of. And that obviously sometimes involves introspection, which at times can be uncomfortable. What's your advice to approach this?
You're right, Victoria. Doing RCA well means becoming a critical friend to your own organisation, and that can feel uncomfortable at times. You're asking teams to pause, look honestly at how things work in reality, and explore issues they may not have spotted before. Sometimes that means challenging those long-held assumptions or questioning why we've always done something a certain way. And the key is creating a space where that discomfort feels safe. Psychological safety often gets talked about a lot, but in root cause work, it's absolutely essential. And one of the tools we found incredibly helpful at Abri is the SCARF model by Dr. David Rock. It really helps you understand the reactions people have when something feels threatening and how to create the conditions when they might feel secure enough to be open, honest, and reflective. And the first principle is to approach RCA with that genuine curiosity and a desire to understand. RCA isn't about blame. We're not asking who made a mistake. We're looking for the conditions that allowed the issue to occur in the first place. And Dr. Edward Deming captures this perfectly when he said, "A bad system will be a good person every time." It shifts that focus away from individuals and towards the environment, processes and handovers that shape what happens. The second principle is involving teams early. They are the experts in how the service actually works day to day. When you give people permission to be honest about pressures, constraints and the workarounds they rely on, you uncover insights you'll never find in a policy document or a process map. And that's why our RCA approach at Abri is deliberately bottom up. Our data tells us where to look. Then we start with the people doing the work, uncover the challenges with them, and co-develop those solutions that are then taken through to senior stakeholders for decision and implementation. And finally, I'd say it's about framing RCA as an opportunity. We all want things to work better for residents and our teams. And when you position RCA as a chance to fix the root cause of a problem once and for all, it really becomes exciting rather than uncomfortable. And teams see that they're not being scrutinised, they're being supportive to create lasting improvement.
So something we've talked about quite a lot here at the Housing Ombudsman Service, we've produced a spotlight report on this, is good knowledge and information management. And we've often referred to this as the golden thread. How does having good knowledge and information management link to being able to do an RCA effectively?
Yeah, so good knowledge and information management is really important for RCA, but I think it's equally important just to take time to reflect and also look more holistically and connect all of the dots. So reliable records, clear timelines, and good communication trails give you sort of part of the picture with the need to be curious and explore other routes that help give you that full story. And there's really where our approach has evolved. So we realize that data alone is not the only way to learn from complaints, especially in a service environment where people, emotions, and sector developments all shape the resident's experience. So data is incredibly useful for identifying where to look, but it doesn't explain why things happen or what it truly feels like for residents when something goes wrong. That's why our RCA approach is deliberately holistic. So alongside the data, we use work shadowing, workshops, customer journey mapping, and mapping the as-is process to understand how the service works in practice. And then crucially, none of this comes at the expense of the resident's voice. So residents really stay central to everything that we do, speaking with them and using customer journey mapping to really understand their lived experience. So often it's the anecdotal insights that bring our findings to life. It's those small but powerful stories that our residents share that show what it really feels like when things go wrong. So yes, strong information management is valuable to begin to understand what's going on in your organization. RCA recognizes that data is one lens and the human experience is another. So when you put those lenses together, that's when you really understand the root cause and design meaningful, lasting solutions.
Thank you very much. I think that's a lovely explanation there. RCA is about finding, understanding and fixing reoccurring issues. So there's the identifying, learning from individual complaints. And then there's that second part, which is looking at those individual findings and analysing the common things that are happening, sort of cross complaints, and then actioning changes and sharing the learning across the organisation. So you're moving them from lessons identified into lessons learned. And we've spoken to lots of landlords who are okay at finding the individual pain points, but then actually struggle to do that wider review of the individual issues to find the themes across complaints. Do you have any tips for how this analysis can be done? Do you use any tools? And if so, what sort of tools do you use?
Yeah, we've got some great tools that we can share, and really at Abri, our analysis is built around multiple lenses and together data, operational insight, resident experience, and sector developments. And that combination is what allows us to move from those individual issues to genuine organisational themes. So we start by gathering evidence from a whole range of sources. That could be complaint records, housing management system records, case notes and customer contact records. Then we layer that with qualitative insight from our customer journey mapping work and our work shadowing sessions, because the human element is often what reveals the why behind a reoccurring issue. So to understand the journey in more depth, we use tools like process mapping and in-person workshops where we apply techniques such as the 5 whys and fault tree analysis. And once we've identified the potential root causes, we use a methodology called failure mode and effects analysis. And this allows us to score each cause based on how frequently it occurs, how severe the impact is, and also how easy it is to detect. That gives us a really robust way of prioritising the issues that will make the biggest difference for residents and for colleagues. And when you bring all of that great stuff together, themes really start to emerge naturally, and you can identify the pain points during the journey. And once those things are clear, the next step is co-designing those solutions with internal teams and residents.
Thanks, Trish. Can you tell us more about the work your team, the RCA team, is doing around the moments that matter to residents and looking into the resident journey with Abri?
Sure. Our first deep dive under our matured RCA approach focused on what we call becoming an Abri resident. That's the journey from the moment a previous tenant moves out through nominations and applications, right the way through to our new resident moving in and the 6-week visit with our housing partners. We chose this moment because we began to see declining satisfaction scores in lettings and quality of home back in August 2025. We were also hearing reoccurring feedback from our customers about delays, unclear communication and unmet expectations. And we know that the way a resident's journey begins sets the tone for their entire relationship with Abri. So getting it right at the start has the biggest impact on that long-term trust and satisfaction. Once we had our approach and methodology in place, we took it to our resident scrutiny group, and their job was to challenge us to look at whether our approach was robust, transparent and appropriate for this piece of work. They actually made 5 recommendations, all of which we adopted. One of those was about language. They encouraged us to use the word resident where appropriate, so we changed the title of the review from becoming an Abri customer to becoming an Abri resident. It's a small shift in wording, but an important one in how we acknowledge the lived experience of those involved. They also asked us to consider internal missed moments, not just the customer-facing ones. Their point was that communication that happens within our teams can be just as critical as what customers experience directly. And we agreed, and this insight was woven throughout the final approach. From there, we invested time with teams on the ground. We did work shadowing, we reviewed process maps, and then mapped how the experience actually plays out in real life. Coupled with insight from residents who took part in our journey mapping sessions, this really gave us a far richer picture of how people feel at key moments in that journey. Once we identified the missed moments, we distilled them into clear problem statements. We then held a new style RCA workshop known as the Y Lab, bringing colleagues from across the business together using tools like the 5 Whys and the fault tree analysis. We really dug down into the underlying root causes. When we understood the root causes, we moved into the How Lab. So this is a space where colleagues could really explore those practical ways to address those issues and talk about what they needed to deliver the Abri service style at its best. We then brought everyone back together in a report that outlined our recommendations and shared it with our operational leads. And once those recommendations are agreed, we'll be asking teams how they can co-create those solutions with residents in their regions. And once changes are implemented, we'll revisit our baseline metrics and earlier performance data to understand what's improved. We're honest with ourselves, as sometimes things don't go exactly as planned, and we may not see the outcome as we hoped for, but we make space to reflect, learn and adjust. Once the recommendations are implemented, we'll revisit our baseline metrics and earlier performance data to see how effective the challenges have been on our residents' experience. We accept sometimes things don't always go to plan, and we might not see the outcomes we had hoped for, but we leave space for reflection and an opportunity to really revisit and change our approach. One key takeaway I'd share with anyone listening today is the importance of engaging stakeholders throughout. That includes colleagues in our communities who bring those practical insights into how things really work, but also our more senior leaders. They understand the conversations happening higher up in the organisation and know how to position our recommendations in a way that supports decision making and the strategic alignment. And bringing those voices in early not only strengthens the quality of the work, it gives the recommendations the best possible chance of being understood, supported and delivered.
Thanks, Trish. What new and emerging trends are you guys at Abri noticing as a result of all of the RCA activity that you're doing?
Yeah, thanks. So a new theme we're looking at is how metrics and the tools we use and the ways of working, so things like our systems, our processes and policies, influence behaviors when delivering services to get ahead of emerging issues in the sector. A second theme that we are also looking at is how we empower our colleagues to lead and deliver services to our residents. So it's become really clear throughout the work with complaints, with our ombudsman casework, just how much passion and commitment there is across our teams to deliver good services to our residents. Everyone we've spoken to genuinely wants to deliver a great experience. And during our workshops, we created the space for colleagues to share what they see every day and the tools that they need to continue to deliver great services to our residents. So it reminded us that some of the biggest improvements come from simply listening to the people doing the work and then triangulating this against our data points and insight reports from the Housing Ombudsman, like the Spotlight reports, ensuring that we're alive to emerging trends in the sector.
Brilliant. I love that. Just simply listening to the people doing the work and also obviously looking at the Housing Ombudsman reports to find the emerging trends. How do you keep track of systemic and thematic issues? Who's owning those actions and who makes sure that they're being followed through?
To support prioritisation and streamline decision making, the Service Improvement Monthly Forum, or SIM as we call it, was established in financial year 24-25. SIM consolidates all major feedback sources, including transactional surveys, tenant satisfaction measures and complaints, and it really allows Abri to identify emerging themes, commission cross-functional deep dives, agree high-level recommendations and track delivery of improvements. It also includes the analysis of learning from customer complaints and tracking any improvement actions in line with the expectations of the Housing Ombudsman Service Complaint Handling Code. And the forum also allows members to identify key and common themes across customer feedback, commission further investigation. So this is done through the forming of cross-functional working groups where we do deep dives where required. We discuss high-level recommendations to improve customer and business outcomes. We assign action owners to work with business areas and then track the delivery of improvements and measure impact of those that have been delivered to ensure that they have had the desired impact and make the measurable difference to Abri's service and our customers' experience. Alongside the Business Engagement Service Improvement team, members also include representatives from our Business Design and Analysis team, our Dispute Resolution team, Customer Relations, Resident Scrutiny Group and Resident Involvement. And those summary regional reports are then shared quarterly with our regional assistant directors that really provide the same overview at a regional level.
So you've got that learning now. How are you cascading that across your organisation?
Thanks, a great question. And I think it's definitely something that we have developed our approach to over the last few years. So we work closely with our organisational development team to share lessons learned, which are then built into our learning offering to the business. So key areas like good knowledge information management and Abri service style training have been informed by learnings from complaints. We have a dedicated SharePoint page that focuses on learning from casework. So we complete gap analysis against the Ombudsman Spotlight reports. And then these are then made available to teams to learn from best practice recommendations from the Housing Ombudsman. We also share the outcome of RCA and realised benefits, so all teams involved can then use these as tools when delivering services to our customers. We hold a monthly change briefing where colleagues are given the opportunity to hear about all the changes underway at Abri to improve services for our residents. So this also includes learning from complaints, service improvement initiatives, and wider projects that might be underway in the business. Further to this, we've got a really great communications team, and they support this by sharing learnings through a range of internal communication channels. So these can be articles to remind teams about our policy and process, or share a service improvement initiative that we identified through RCA. Externally, we also publish case studies as part of our annual complaints and service improvement report, with the case study shared internally through the methods that we've just shared. And every year we put together a video that is shared with our board that features customers talking about their experiences and captures lessons learned, just to make sure that the board remain connected to our customers and communities.
How do you ensure that the lessons are then embedded in the organisation and actually things have changed?
Yeah, so I think it's a really important part of the process, particularly just making sure that we track that realised benefit. So we monitor that lessons learned and changes are embedding in our process. We have a structured and evidence-based approach to this. So we have a clear starting point, which is informed by data, and we work with stakeholders to agree what that problem is, what needs to be done, and what good looks like. And this gives us a framework for monitoring whether lessons learned are embedding as we intended. So the outcomes should be felt by our customers, and we measure that by monitoring complaint volumes, tracking performance metrics, and other feedback points. The great thing about root cause analysis and service improvement versus a large project is that it can be marginal gains where you learn on the go, continuously tweak your approach to achieve the desired outcome. It's organic and curious and local to the issue with the people delivering the service. Another essential part of our approach is completing gap analysis against spotlight reports from the service. So like I spoke about, we benchmark our services against those recommendations, and it gives us another lens to sense check if lessons learned are embedding. And we use that as a tool to refine and strengthen any service improvement initiatives. Our approach ensures that learning from complaints doesn't just remain on paper, so they result in sustainable change that improves the experience for our residents and empowers our team to deliver services in line with Abri's service style.
How do you link into the board and the senior leadership at Abri about the issues, and what does that working relationship look like?
So we have a really strong connection with our senior leadership team and our board on complaints. So we've got strong governance oversight of our complaints and housing ombudsman performance, which includes learning from complaints. Performance reports submitted into different governance forums on a monthly, quarterly, or 6-monthly basis, depending on the forum, with full visibility given to our MRC, who subsequently shares this insight with the board. This ensures that the board have clear oversight of complaint performance and lessons learnt and the issues affecting our residents. It also provides assurances that through our structured and evidence-based approach to tracking lessons learnt, that Abri is focusing on the areas that matter most to our residents.
So you mentioned there the MRC, or the member responsible for complaints. How does your MRC at Abri link into the process for learning from complaints?
Yeah, so our MRC champions a positive complaint handling culture, ensuring complaints at Abri are prioritised with clear learnings, and there remains a strong link to operational service improvement. So our MRC chairs our Customer Performance Committee, which is one of our governance forums, where complaint and housing ombudsman performance is reported. This ensures that we've got that strong governance oversight of performance and lessons learned, with outputs regularly reviewed to ensure that they're actually leading to better outcomes for our residents. Our Chief Operating Officer is also given visibility of requests for information that we receive from the Housing Ombudsman, as well as determinations. Ensures that the appropriate actions are taken to put things right, and that any learnings lead to tangible service improvements. So our Chief Operating Officer also acts as a key link between operational delivery, our MRC, and the board, strengthening that governance oversight, reinforcing a culture of continuous improvement, but also acting as that golden thread.
Do you benchmark against other organisations to help with improving?
Great question. Yes, we do. And it's really important to us that we look up and out to understand what is happening in the sector to support how we learn and improve our services. We regularly benchmark our services against the Housing Ombudsman Spotlight reports, and we use these to identify any gaps and inform any service improvement initiative. The reports give us a clear view of emerging best practice in the sector and are a really valuable reference point for us. We also use the landlord performance scorecards published by the service to benchmark our performance with other landlords. It helps us understand how we are really performing relative to organisations of a similar size and where we can improve. And alongside this, we review TSM data, which gives us a really broader sense of what's happening across the sector. And it helps us spot those wider trends that may be relevant to our own residents. I'd also say that networking is also really important. We take the opportunity to learn directly from others in the sector by attending and participating in Housing Ombudsman webinars, landlord forums and other roundtables. And this really gives us a chance to hear how others are learning from complaints and share insight on what's working well in our organisation.
That's great. Yeah, you came along to do a webinar, Learning from Complaints webinar with us in January 2026. So if any of you listening want to watch that back, you can access that on our Centre for Learning Landlord Hub, where you can watch the recording back and see the slides, so you can see what the guys talked about there. So have you got any examples of when you have identified an issue or issues, action plan to change those and take them from being lessons identified into lessons learned, and what the impact of that has been?
Yes, we have. So the first one I'll talk about is around noise. And it actually came following a Housing Ombudsman's termination order to review service failures in the handling of noise complaints. And following this, a senior management review was conducted. And the review identified lessons learned and areas of improvement to really strengthen our handling of noise complaints at Abri. We started with a gap analysis against the Housing Ombudsman spotlight on noise to inform actions. And the key achievements from the lessons learned review included a new standalone noise transference procedure, which was operationalised on the 1st of August 2025. We also put in place an enhanced triage and investigation approach. This included updating our noise packs, our customer services guidance, and this was to ensure that we had accurate classification and early intervention in place. We also put in things like preventative measures in properties such as acoustic mats and flooring specifications for new build and void properties, and enhanced operational capability with mobile tablets for our community safety officers. And we also put in additional training to ensure consistent case management. So thinking about the benefits that this delivered, well, we had alignment with the Housing Ombudsman best practice in operational delivery. So with that consistent approach to noise across Abri, we had a transparent process and consistent communication. And we also saw stronger cross-team collaboration and in last year's annual complaints and service improvement report, we reported that between January 2023 and December 2023, an average of 7.2 stage 1 complaints were received per month in relation to noise issues. And in the following calendar year, this figure decreased to 5.3 complaints per month. So that really represented a 26% reduction. And this equates to approximately 22 fewer complaints over the year. And this trend continued in the final quarter of the 2024-2025 financial year. We also looked at this again during financial year 25-26, where we experienced a further reduction in stage 1 complaints between January 2025 and December 2025, with 89 complaints in total relating to noise, 43 of which were stage 1 complaints, resulting in an average of 3.6 stage 1 complaints per month, which represented a 50% decrease since January to December 2023's figures. And we feel this improvement really demonstrates that positive impact of the service improvement initiative. We then had a request from the Housing Ombudsman Service, and during collation of the information, it also identified another learning opportunity from a complaint. So this was around the letters used by Abri's housing team for property inspections and safeguarding visits, and how they could be improved to ensure they were more customer focused. So my service improvement coordinator consulted with residents and collaborated with colleagues to produce a new suite of property inspection letters that were clearer on the purpose of the visit, more empathetic in tone, and really shaped by Abri's customer advisory panel. So the types of benefits this delivered were improved customer experience and tone of communication, directly addressing feedback from customers during the internal complaints process. We also saw a stronger alignment with customer expectations on how Abri should communicate, and increased clarity on the purpose of visits to reduce risk of misunderstanding and customer complaints.
So reflecting on your experience with root cause analysis at Abri, what advice would you give to landlords who are considering an RCA approach to enhance learning from complaints? And what key factors should they keep in mind when implementing it in their own organisation?
Oh, great question. I think reflecting on our experience so far, my biggest piece of advice for any landlord considering a root cause approach is to recognise that it's as much a cultural shift as it is a methodology. Culture really is that glue that ensures any improvements stick. So the first key factor is mindset. Root cause analysis only works when people understand that it's about making improvements and not about blame. And when colleagues feel safe to be honest about the pressures, the workarounds, and the reality of their day-to-day experience, you unlock insights that you'll never find in the data alone. I'd say secondly, keep it holistic. Complaints give you valuable signals, but they're only one part of the story. The real learning comes when you blend data with work shadowing, workshops, journey mapping, and lived experience from both residents and colleagues. That mix is what helps you understand not just what went wrong, but why it keeps happening. And then thirdly, I'd say be structured and consistent. Whatever framework you use, whether it's the 5 whys, the fault tree, the failure mode effect analysis, or thematic coding, use it the same way every time. Consistency allows themes to emerge, helps teams trust the findings, and really creates a clear golden thread from insight to action. The next factor I would say is involvement. Co-design solutions with the people delivering the service. They know where the friction points are, what's realistic, and what needs to change. Their buy-in is what turns recommendations into meaningful improvement. And then finally, close the loop. RCA shouldn't just stop at the report. Revisit the data, measure the impact of the changes, and be honest about what worked and what didn't. That's how you build a genuine culture of learning and continuous improvement. So I guess my advice is be curious, be consistent, and be collaborative, and always keep residents and colleagues at the heart of the process. If you do that, RCA becomes more than an investigation tool. It becomes a way of continually improving the experience for the people you serve.
I think that's a lovely note to end it on. So thank you both so much for your time today. And thank you to those who have listened to this podcast. I hope those listening, whether you're working for a small or a large landlord or something in between, have found the examples that Tadana and Trish have shared are useful. And actually that even without having an RCA team, it's still possible to achieve positive outcomes and learn from complaints. We're going to be continuing to develop our resources on root cause analysis and share these via our Centre for Learning. So do keep your eyes on the platform for more information. And you can keep abreast of new things that are happening on our website as well, www.housing-ombudsman.org.uk. And you can find out more about Abri on their website, www.abri.co.uk. I've mentioned the Centre for Learning already, but it is a learning platform for our member landlords to access learning resources for free, including watching back that Abri webinar from January 2026. You can also find details about accessing that on our website. So thank you again for listening and see you soon.